episode number 197.
Hello, you're listening to the Career Changemaker podcast. Having the courage to leave a career that you have worked hard to build and try something else can be tough. So in each episode, we dive into key career change strategies so that you have a clear understanding of what is required to transition into a new role or a new industry without feeling like you have to start at the bottom or have to take a massive pay cut, because #ain't nobody got time for that. If you are ready for frank and honest discussions about how to become a career change maker, keep listening. I'm your host, lawyer turned career strategist and executive coach, Janine Esbrand. Hello. I want to talk about moving past negative work experiences and the importance of that. I have lots of conversations. I do a lot of talking. I speak to people on podcast interviews. I speak to clients all the time. I have conversations with people just generally. And I recognize that through these conversations, there's often golden nuggets that come out, and there is perspective that people share with me or that I'm able to share with them that I think would be useful to everybody. And so I'm going to be doing more of these career conversations so that we can talk about topics that are relevant, topics that are helpful, topics that can support you in moving forward in whichever way that looks for you, right? So the reason why I'm talking about this is because it's come up a few times in coaching sessions recently. So I was working with one particular client who is ready to make moves in her career. She's ready to step up into a more senior position. She's ready to really take ownership of the direction that she wants to take her career in the longer term. And so we were really diving in and getting into what it is that she wants, where it is that she wants to go, and how we need to position herself. So it's exciting that she's taken that step. But what I recognized was that there was some resistance around actually doing the work. So once she identified what it is that she wanted to do and how it is she could go about making it happen, there was some resistance around actually taking the steps. And this happens often. Often people know what they want to do, they know where they want to get to, but there is a path to get there, and that path doesn't always feel comfortable. And so there's reasons why resistance will come up, and there's various different reasons why resistance will come up. But for this particular client, what we realized is that her resistance was coming from a place of past experiences. It was coming because she had some previous experiences with a previous employer that had really impacted her, that had really affected her confidence, and it had her questioning whether or not she could actually move into the type of role that she wanted to move into. So I want to dive into that a bit, because for many of you, you may be thinking about making some kind of move in your career. You may be saying, yes, I'm ready to go for that promotion. You may be saying that I want to step up and become more of an industry leader in my space. You may be saying that I know that where I am right now is not where I need to be. I need to be somewhere else, but I feel resistant around making the move. And if the reason for that resistance is you've had some negative experiences in the past, it's important to address that, and it's important to deal with that before you try and move forward. And I'm going to break down why it's important. So for this particular client, she had a negative experience in the first 90 days of her moving into a new role, which turns out wasn't the best aligned role for her. And she was worried that if she was to move into another role, a similar experience could happen. So I want to talk about why it is you need to really think about what's going on for you around past experiences. And those experiences could be like particular incidences that happened in isolation. It could be something that happened over a period of time. It could be something that you did. It could be something that someone else did. It could be anything, but there could be a reason why that past experience has really stuck with you and then is impacting the way you're thinking about what you can do going forward and the way you're feeling about what you can do going forward. So if you have an experience and you don't fully process what happened, why it happened, and draw from it the lessons that need to be drawn from it, it's even though you might think you're just pushing it to the back of your mind and you're just going to forget about it and you're going to move on, likelihood is you're not fully moving on. The likelihood is you're not fully moving on if it's causing you to not go for what you want as quickly as you could or as wholeheartedly as you could. It means that it's still something that you need to address and you need to be thinking about, right? And so there's three things that can happen if you don't address those past experiences, those negative experiences, and really take some time to set your intentions about how you want to move forward. So the first thing is you're going to show up differently. So if that past experience has affected your confidence, if it has affected the way you're thinking about your ability, it's going to be very hard for you to show up fully. It's going to be very hard for you to fully articulate your value. It's going to be very hard for you to present yourself as the ideal candidate for a new opportunity if deep down you don't feel as though you're worthy. Deep down you don't feel as though you could actually do it because of something that happened in the past. So how you show up is impacted by what you're thinking and what you're believing about yourself and about what's possible for you. We can't fake it. Oftentimes people will say, fake it till you make it. That only takes you so far. There is something about confidence or lack thereof that can be felt, that can be read, and you can't always put your finger on it, right? So if there's something that you haven't fully addressed, it's going to be harder for you to show up and impress for your next opportunity. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it isn't just about what you say, it's also about what you do and what you expect. So you might be saying, yeah, I'm going to go into this role and I'm going to treat it differently. This is going to be a clean slate. I'm going to look at this differently. I'm going to approach this differently. You could be saying all of that, but your past experiences can shape your expectations. So to give you an example of that, one of my clients had a negative experience with a past boss, with a past manager who very much took the position of a micromanager. So they expected my client to go back to them and check things. They expected my client to go back to them and discuss things. They expected to be able to sign off things. So over time, because that was the expectation, my client got into the habit of doing that. Right? Got into the habit of second guessing herself, got into the habit of not fully trusting herself when it came to decision making and instead deferring to her manager. Now that worked for that manager because that was that manager's preference, right? They wanted to control everything. As my client then moved into a new role, she fell into the same relationship with her new manager and just expected that that manager would want to be treated and dealt with in the same way. So what she did was she would go and ask questions. She would check things. She wouldn't take as much initiative and she wouldn't make decisions and she would defer to the manager. Now, when it came to her appraisal and it came to the conversation about how she could have performed better, that manager said he expected that she would have stepped up. He expected that she would have been able to make more decisions. He expected that she wouldn't have always second guessed herself, or she wouldn't have always lent on his decision making in the role. Now, the way that she showed up and the way that she approached this role was very much dictated by her previous experience with her previous manager. However, this new manager, that wasn't his expectation. So if you don't fully address how things were dealt and how things were done and how your negative experience was impacting you or how it affected you, then you may well go into your new environment where you do have a new opportunity to do things differently, but you may bring with you expectations that have been set because of your past experience. So it's important for you to acknowledge it, understand it, and decide, is the best course of action me assuming that my manager is going to be the same as my previous manager, or do I need to have a conversation up front to understand what the boundaries are here? Right? So expectations can be misaligned if you don't address what happened in the past. And then the other thing is, if you are not clear and if you're not aware of the things that have shaped the way that you performed and the way that you've shown up, it's likely that patterns can repeat themselves. So if you're fearing that a similar thing could happen in a new environment, the way that you combat that is to understand what was actually going on here. What role did you play? What did you contribute? What did other people contribute? What were the circumstances? What were the decisions? Really unpacking all of those things so that you're able to distinguish between that specific situation and then any future situation that you find yourself in. So you want to make sure that, firstly, you are showing up in the way that you want to be showing up because you fully process what went on in the past. You want to make sure that your expectations are not set solely based on what previously happened. And then you want to make sure that you are in a position to prevent the same thing happening again because you've taken the time to really dissect it and consider it. So those are the three things that you want to be doing, and the reasons why it's important for you to really be considering those past work experiences and how they have impacted you so that they don't have to impact you continually going forward. Often we coast along without really taking the intention and taking the time to shape the reality. So going from one role to another role and being passive in that, where you're like, okay, I'm here, tell me what I need to do. I'm here, tell me what you expect of me, without really thinking about, well, what do you expect? What are you hoping to get out of the role? How do you want to show up in the first 90 days? What impact do you want to make? And shifting the focus from I'm an employee who just gets told what to do and I show up and I do what I'm supposed to do and that's how I add value, to recognizing that you taking ownership of your career development and you taking ownership of how you want to grow into a role is the thing that can help you to stand out from other people, that can help you to be noticed, that can help you to make an impact a lot quicker. So when you think about the things that could have happened in the past, there's various different things. Like I said before, there is things that other people have done to you. There's things that you have done yourself. There's things that you influence. There are client relationships that may have occurred. There's lots of things that could have happened. But what you want to be doing is looking at your circumstance and asking yourself, like, what is the lesson? What is the lesson that I can learn from this experience? So that lesson could be something that you need to approach differently, like recognizing that the way that you were working and the way that you were doing things wasn't actually working. And so you need to do things differently. It could be you recognizing that in certain situations, you default to a certain way of operating that isn't serving you. You could be recognizing that certain environments are not the right environment for you to be in, or that don't allow you to thrive. You could recognize that certain personality types don't align well with the way that you like to do things. There's various lessons that you can learn from specific situations. So rather than taking the whole experience with you and assuming that what happened in the past might happen again and allowing that to prevent you from moving forward, take the lessons, but take the time to dissect what happened so you can draw out the lessons, right? What have I learned in this situation, rather than beating myself up and saying, oh, I shouldn't have allowed myself to get in that situation, or I should have known better, or I should have. It's okay, I didn't. That was a situation. It happened. How do we move forward? What lessons can I learn? There's one particular example that always springs to mind when I think about this for me, and that was when I was working as a legal examiner at the Insolvency Service. Quite early on in my legal career, I was going through law school at the time and I was doing this role. And I remember in our training, we were told, whenever you are interviewing somebody, make sure that in the interviewing room, you are the person who has your back to the door. Right. So we would be interviewing company directors of companies that had gone into liquidation, and where there was potentially some foul play, or there are thoughts that the reason why the company went to liquidation was very much linked to the actions of the director. We would investigate those companies and we would look and see what happened. And if it was found that the director did do some things that they weren't supposed to do, then there could be a director disqualification process. So as part of the investigation, we needed to interview those directors and find out what was going on. So that's the backstory. So I was in a situation where I was interviewing a director. I went into the interviewing room. I allowed him to go into the room first, and then he sat down in the seat that I should have sat in. So he sat down with his back to the door, and then I sat in the other seat. Everything was going well initially. It's fine. I thought to myself, oh, I shouldn't allow that to happen. But I thought, oh, it's done now. He's sitting down. It's fine. As we got into the conversation and I started asking some more and more challenging questions that he didn't like, things shifted and he started to get annoyed, he started to get irate, he started to shout, he stood up. And I was like, oh, this is not really going very well. I had to keep my calm. And because I kept my calm, he kind of like came to himself and realized that he was shouting at me for like, wasn't really my fault, although he was saying it was my fault. And it all resolved. But in that moment, when I left the interview room, my thought was, oh, that was a big mistake. Shouldn't have done that. And then what was the lesson? It was like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. But instead of me then saying, oh, I'm not going to go and do any more of these interviews because I could risk this happening again, my thought was, okay, what was the lesson then? Do not allow the person to go in first. Take that lesson and make sure that you use that going forward. So going forward in any interview situation that I had at that company or other situations that I've been in when it comes to dealing with clients or dealing with different people, I am more mindful about how I go about setting up interviews. I am more mindful about my presence and where I sit and where I situate myself because of that one experience. And so I see it as, yes, it wasn't pleasant in the moment, but I learned something from that. And I want you to approach any negative work experiences that you've had in the past in a similar way so that you're able to turn what was a negative experience into something that can be positive moving forward. So if you've learned a lesson from it, whether it's a hard lesson or not, it's positive moving forward, right? So that is what I want you to be thinking about. Take the time to really assess what actually happened, dissect that, reflect on that, what occurred, what was said, what wasn't said, what was communicated, how was it communicated, could it have been different, what was something that you can take ownership of and what was something that other people should take ownership of, separating those things out. So it's important that you are really thinking about what was going on in the moment and then what can I take from this going forward that's going to serve me. That's going to serve me going forward. Because so often we carry with us baggage and we take forward things that are not helpful. So if we circle back and we talk about my client, she was thinking, well, if I move into this new role and it doesn't work out, I might end up leaving before the end of my probation again. And I don't want that to happen. It's like, yes, potentially. But now we need to look at what were some of the factors that contributed to you being in a company that wasn't aligned or you not being able to perform in the way that you wanted to perform. And then if you know what those are, then you can solve for those in advance. Then you can start asking yourself, okay, well, what were the things that were present? What type of company? What type of people? What type of experience did I have or not have? What exposure did I need? Or, you can ask yourself, what are the things that were missing that didn't allow this to be a smooth process? And then make sure that whatever you're moving into, whatever you're setting up going forward, isn't the same. Or you've addressed those things in advance to make sure that you're avoiding a similar situation happening again. Okay, so that is what I wanted to share with you. I see too many people being held back by what they assume might happen in the future based on what's happened in the past. And if we can spend some time reflecting on what happened in the past, draw out the lessons, let go of any shame that you're feeling, let go of any resentment or guilt or those kinds of emotions that you're feeling around what happened in the past, and really think about how can I take what happened and draw out the things that are going to be helpful for me to move forward. Because the reality is we can't change the past, but we can rewrite or we can dictate and determine the future, right? Because when I say rewrite, often we've already decided like this is how it's going to turn out, and what you think and what you believe about what's going to happen is so powerful. So rewrite the thoughts that you have about the experience you're about to have, and allow that to guide you going forward. I hope you have found that useful. I'll be back very soon. And if you are somebody who is in the midst of considering making moves in your career, whether you are stepping up, whether you are stepping out to do something different, then send me a DM. Let's have a conversation and see if and how I can support you with moving forward. All right, that's all from me. Bye. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe to the show so that you don't miss any future episodes. Also, I would love to know what your biggest takeaway has been from today's episode. Come over and join us in our Career Changemakers community over on LinkedIn so that you can join the conversation there.